Welcome to the Metapod Podcast, the Pokemon podcast that revolves around the evolving meta. It's an excellent Tuesday, Sean, for you and I.
Mm-hmm.
There's probably something spectacular going on as you're listening to this podcast, but how are you doing today?
I mean, I'm doing great, Jake. I had a lovely time hiking last weekend.
Oh, okay.
But I was back on Sunday, and I did get to catch some of the top tables. Not all of it, because, you know, Cowboys game. But, like, also, but I did get to see some of it, and I was very excited about what I saw in Peoria. So, you know, we'll get to that at some point. What about you?
I am also excited. I mostly watched day one. I spent a lot of time this weekend traveling, like, to and from. I finally went home for the first time in a long time, because this was the first weekend that I didn't have to do, like, any run a sporting event type thing. So that was insane. But I also looked for... So, Sean, have you done anything with the One Piece trading card game?
I briefly saw some people playing it. They like did some demo day stuff at Gen Con.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a few of my Digi peeps are big into that. Have started playing it. I will say the pre-release winner cards are very shiny. They have like a big old stamp. But from what I saw, it's very similar to Dragon Ball Super. Like a lot of the mechanics. It's like Dragon Ball Super with some Digimon, but mostly Dragon Ball Super.
I don't know how much I'll be playing it, but I wanted to get the cards at least. And I went to like 3 different card shops on my way back from home because there's a couple card shops that I passed by. None of them had it. And I was like, I'm going to have to buy them on eBay.
I mean, that is surprising. Did they stock other Bandai card games? Did they stock Digimon or Dragon Ball Super?
Yes. Digimon, I know for sure. Pokemon for sure. Yu-Gi-Oh for sure. One of the stores had like Weiss Schwartz stuff.
Oh, okay, that's very yeah. I mean, it also could be. I don't know if the cards are actually released or if it was just like pre-release.
It was just the pre-release thing that went on like over the weekend, and so
maybe
like I wanted to get some pre-release decks though, you know.
Yeah, no, I feel that. Have you read all 1,000 plus? Have you read all 1,000 plus arcs or whatever of the
No,
the One Piece?
I have not. I have not read all the chapters of One Piece, but I'm almost at the halfway point of being up to date on the manga in terms of owning it. I own like volumes 1 through 15, and then like from 71 to 100.
Okay, yeah,
I haven't got
makes sense.
So like. Well, like I have, you know, the 4th box set that came out, and then I got the first 15 volumes, just assortment and stuff. And so my plan is to get the 2nd box set, and then the 3rd box set, and then be up to date. Like just buy the boxes, you know, to be up to date.
That's the value.
But anyways, we're not a One Piece trading card game podcast. We're a Pokemon podcast, trading card game. And although there was not a ton of news stuff this week, there are a couple things that we want to talk about, along with the ever exciting, in my opinion, Peoria Regional results, the first regional with Lost Origin legal, and there was some very exciting stuff. But Sean, what do we have first? What do we have?
Well, we don't have a 5-star review this week, if I'm correct, but we did get a wonderful message last week, I believe it was, on our Twitter. You can always hit us up in the DMs, and this user, Shayla's, I'll just say, but I won't say their full like handle just in case. But
yes,
but they know who they are. They wanted to share with us like some of a negative tournament experience they had. I know a week or 2 ago we talked about some challenging experiences people had. He shared a negative experience where his opponent was what we call rule sharking a little bit, where you just kind of are like really intensely watching every move your opponent makes and like trying to be like, you're not allowed to do that, or you can't do that differently.
It's like the thing of, you know, as soon as you take your finger off the thumb, you can't touch it anymore,
right?
You know,
which is like, yeah. And he asked, though, specifically, he was like, hey, you know, I wonder if y'all have had any negative experiences at a tournament. And Jake and I were both like, hey, this could be an interesting way to, like, start the...
Yeah, I mean, IRL's coming back. People are competing in regionals and stuff, new seasons. So, you know, there's probably a bunch of people that are going to come across a person that's not super great or whatever. And so, you know, it could help a little bit. You know, just a fun little conversation. So, Sean, do you have an experience that you would like to mention?
I do. I wonder if longtime listeners have heard this story.
Maybe.
So I had one experience where I was playing in the cup that happens, because every regional has typically like a league cup that happens the next day for people who didn't make day 2.
Mm-hmm.
So I was playing in the league cup, and things were going fine. I was playing against a Blacephalon GX deck, and a couple of turns in, I'm really doing well. My opponent has like one card in hand, maybe. He's totally bricked up. And I'm playing a Firebox deck which uses a card called Giant Hearth, where you discard a card, you get 2 fire energy from your deck. I go to discard a reset stamp. But at the time, a lot of people, when they would use some of these cards that like you discarded with a stadium, you would take the card and you would tap the card onto the stadium. This was just like, not like a legal, like a rules thing, but like it was just common practice that you tap the card on the stadium to say, hey, I'm discarding this card to use this effect. You do your thing. The card that I chose to discard was Reset Stamp. Now, my opponent saw that, took the opportunity to then shuffle their one card hand into their deck while I still had 6 prizes, and they had 6 prizes left. So it's like they continued to shuffle the card, draw 6. And then I was like, whoa, what are you doing? And he was like, oh, I thought you played Reset Stamp. And I was like, no, I said discard for Hearth. Got the judge. The judge came over, informed me that I was the one in the wrong. Because instead of simply placing the Reset Stamp into the discard pile directly, I put the Reset Stamp in the field of play in some capacity, and that my action had caused the confusion, and I received a game loss.
You know what's really funny, though, is because that action of just putting it in the discard, I would consider that also. Like,
Having
I see
played the Reset Stamp.
Yeah, because, I mean, people do that all the time, like Echoing Horn.
Yeah.
Like, they just put the Echoing Horn and they're like, bring that Sobble up or whatever, but they don't, like, use it to point. I've also used a Reset Stamp to flash in front of my opponent to be like, hey, it's gone. So I don't think you're winning in this one, Sean.
I mean, so it was a weird situation because, like, I talked to the judge, and then I went and had the head judge come over. I appealed, which you can do at any big tournament. Mm-hmm. You can always appeal to the head judge, and I recommend you do it if you think you're in the right. And the head judge explained to me that they had to change their rulings based on a way that people used to cheat with N and Ultra Ball. So this was before I played the game, mind you. There used to be a thing where people would play Ultra Ball, but they would put N on the top of the usage of Ultra Ball. And that would oftentimes, either intentionally or not, trick their opponents into thinking that an N was played. And they would start shuffling their deck. And it would cause them to receive a game loss because you've shuffled your hand into your deck, right? Mm-hmm. So because players are using that technique, the idea of like, hey, if you confuse your opponent with your game action and then they do something, you are the one at fault for a game loss. And I'm like, so that was my bad experience because it was like the opponent, I'm like, I'm really far ahead. You have one card in hand and you basically didn't attach and you passed last turn. Why would I stamp you with 6 prizes? Why? So, you know, the opponent wasn't mean or anything, but I was just a little bit, I was salty, and that was round 1 of the tournament, and I just dropped, because I was like, I lost the first round just because of that, and I was like, I'm too frazzled. Like, I can't believe this happened. So, bad experience.
So there's a lot of things you can learn from that right there. 1, you can appeal things. You can appeal stuff. That is something that a lot of people don't know. And it's something that I didn't really know when I was playing a lot more because I lived in a very populated area.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that can help a lot of people out. Don't just appeal to appeal, though.
No.
Is my advice.
Yes.
Appeal, it's like in football, right? When you throw the red flag, you throw the challenge flag.
Have a reason.
You only get a couple of those. Yeah, you got to have a good reason for it. Like either you do not agree with how it was handled, right? Or that it's a wrong or whatever. Don't just appeal because you lost or, you got caught or whatever. I don't know. But also, I think it's very underrated to drop because you're not feeling it.
Yeah, I think...
like... When you said that you dropped because you felt razzled, that is, I had that same thing in like sports. Like I had a swim meet one time where I competed that I did so poorly in a meet. I did so poorly in the first event that I ended up just dropping the rest of the way. And you know what? I took that rest of the day. I watched teammates swim. It wasn't like a big like championship, like, oh, we could win state or whatever, or nationals. Wasn't anything like that. It was just a meet that I went to. And it felt a lot better than if I suffered through the other 3 events that I was going to swim. So definitely, yeah.
I dropped, I felt frustrated for like 20 or 30 minutes. And then I found my friends. I vented to them for a small amount of time. And then we had a great day, And yeah, I fully am like, I'm on your side on that one, Jake. Dropping... not bringing that energy to the other people that you could be playing against sometimes. Yeah, because
everybody, I think, or I guess I should say, a lot of people who have played against a person that's just in a terrible attitude.
Yeah,
they're just mad. It makes things awkward between you two, like, because you're like, good luck, and they're like, yeah, like. It's weird, and then if you beat them, like they're even more mad, and you're like, good game, and they're like, screw off, or like,
it's that feeling of like you beat them, and then you're just like, I'm so sorry, like I know you're already having a bad day, but
like,
I'm so sorry.
I'm just trying to win. So like, those are a couple of things that I think could really help you out. Did you also? I don't know if they did this day 1, but when I tuned in for a little bit on day 2, they were doing this instead of like doing the we'll be right back, thing, like where they go like 12 minutes of just the camera on the venue or whatever. So then the casters don't have to talk for 20 minutes about the same thing over and over, which I think, by the way, the casters did a very good job of stalling time when they had to, as they usually do. They brought in a judge for like an interview in between rounds. I think it was in between rounds. And I don't think I've ever seen that before. And they just kind of like talk to the judge, like, hey, what do you do? What should a player do if there's a situation? Like it was very, cool. Especially with the stuff that we talked about the other week with like the cheating and things like that, or the potential cheating, or just the game penalties and stuff that came out. I thought it was very interestingly timed. And I don't know if they've ever done that on a Pokemon stream before, at least since I've started watching in like 2019.
Yeah, the judges are usually just not on screen at all.
They're just usually like at the table, the stream table. So I thought it was really, really cool. So if you watch like the Pokemon VOD for day 2, go ahead, find that interview. I think it was the latter part of the day. I don't know if it was like, I think it might have been like before top 4, because I think I got home from the family event and then I tuned in, and it was like, I don't know. It was sometime during day 2. But I had never seen that before. I thought it was kind of cool, actually.
That's cool. Yeah. No, I mean, I heard they were doing like player interviews like after the games on day 1 as well, which like all that stuff is really cool additions. Because again, like 12 minutes, any streamer out there, Jake included, myself, will tell you 12 minutes of dead air is not always a good thing. Now,
yeah, like I used to work in radio, and like 12 minutes is a really long time.
And like the casters need the break, don't get me wrong, but you gotta fill that time. And so like, if you have like a B team, or if you can bring out people in between to talk and fill that time, always preferred.
Especially because I think, especially with all the newer players right now in the game that are just getting into the IRL scene, right? Because we've been playing in the pandemic for so long. It's very intimidating to call the judge or whatever. Everybody just associates it as a bad thing. So I thought it was really cool. I thought that was a cool thing to bring up. I haven't really had any super bad negative experiences. I just had jerk people that I've played against. Like I was playing this random like challenge one time, and I played this random deck that I found from like an Asian tournament. It was like Buzzwolf Formosa GX with ADP.
Okay.
It was just not like a great deck, but it had one top 8 showing, and I was like, I want to try that. I got these cards. And so like I hadn't really practiced with it at all. And so I was playing this challenge for like the first time, and this guy that I played against, I made a mistake. And when I realized it, I was like, oh no. And he just slow clapped. Like when I realized it. And I was like, you're awful. You're a terrible human being.
That's
like
IRL.
I didn't know this guy.
That's
I wasn't
some
his
IRL
friend.
BMing right there.
Yeah, like I was very mad.
He was IRL
ended up-
spamming. You have a good deck.
Yeah, it's like, oh gosh, just I could understand if it was my friend.
Yeah,
right?
sure. Yeah.
Like my friend Kyle that I've played a lot with and traveled with to different events. If he did that, I would laugh. But it's this random guy I don't know, like Jiminy Christmas, buddy. But let's talk about some good things. Sean, let's talk about some good things, including a new full art supporter card that is incoming. This was, I don't know if this was like a leak or an accidental leak or what have you, but there was a new full art promo spotted in the Pokemon's official Card Decks app. This is an app, I think, where you can like track the cards that you own or something.
Indeed.
Like that. I don't use it personally, but I know a lot of people do. So go check it out if you want some help on keeping track of your collection. And this new promo came up. Sword and Shield 251 is its label. Hasn't even been revealed in Japan yet. It's just boom right on there. And it's Boss's Orders Cyrus edition. So Cyrus, the bad guy in Diamond and Pearl, the Gen 4 era, very, very popular. Sean, this is not the optimal Boss's Orders. I will say Mitsuhiro Arita, excellent artist, has made incredible cards. This man looks like Dumbo.
You know what this man looks like? This man looks like we have Super Saiyan Blue Goku at home.
Yeah.
That's what this man looks like.
It's like that plus every YouTuber's thumbnail face.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. This is perfect. That's a perfect description.
But it is a Sword and Shield promo. It is a new full art supporter, which is very popular, including people like myself. But there's currently no announced products that we know that are going to go with this promo as of right now. It might be tied to one releasing in early 2023, including the like special set, I believe, that's going to be in around that time. It could be something with a box on that. Who knows?
I mean, I will say
maybe something that we don't know of, or the store's exclusive. We talked a lot about stores exclusives lately.
You know what it might be, Jake? You know how they had the Marnie? You know how they had the Marnie premium, like the Marnie box?
They could do that, actually. They did it with Juniper. They did it with Marnie.
Yep. So these are like the three what I would call like staple supporters for the majority of the Sword and Shield era. You had Research, you had Marnie, and you have Boss. And I think that's what this is going to be, because it is a promo, which means that it won't be in packs. And I'm like, when do they ever put promos as like the front of? Nope, they do it in the Juniper box, the Marnie box, and then the Boss.
They do it in the Juniper box and the weird Pokemon Go boxes that had the 3 leaders, whatever they're. Anyways,
yep.
I like your opinion, Sean. I think you have the correct take on this. And I think as well, because if you look, you know, at the promos, Poke Beach, which is where we're getting this information, has the little promo screenshot from the app. And wouldn't you know, on there's Juniper from that milk carton box. They're the Marnies from the milk carton box. And there's some other ones in there
even
too,
Burnett,
like the gold
which
Pokeball.
Came in. Even Burnett, which came in the V Union boxes.
It did. I mean, I think it's guaranteed that it'll come in a box
true.
of some sort, because I think the I think the promo for like the special set ETB that'll come out next year, that's going to be like a V or a V Max or a V Star. I bet it's going to be a V Star.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like your idea a lot, actually.
Yeah, I mean, especially because well, I guess Boss's Order though, this one has an F regulation mark, right?
Well, yeah, because Boss's Orders, I
What's
believe Boss's Orders is F regulation, right?
is Marnie F regulation as well?
I thought Marnie was the
D.
first one. What was the first one? D? I
Yeah.
thought it was D regulation.
Okay. I might be getting mixed up with when Boss's Orders came out.
It came out in Rebel Clash.
Okay, so I feel like the original would have been a deregulation mark. So I'll be interested.
Oh, actually.
I'll be interested to see if Bosses is now going to be a staple like Juniper, or like basically like Research is a staple. So they'll keep it around for a few more sets.
We can tell you if it's a staple right now or not later when you listen to us talk about Peoria regional results.
Right.
But first, Sean, we're talking. I mean, we talked about some English products incoming. Let's talk about this really, really cool Japanese product that's coming that I have not heard anybody talk about now. This is news that broke out like 2 weeks ago. Really. The Paradigm Trigger, that is a set coming out soon in Japan. A mystery box has officially been revealed. And in this mystery box, this is the first mystery box I believe they've done something like this. Will be released in Japan on October 21st, 2022 for 2750 yen. It's going to come out the same day as Paradigm Triggered the set. It's a mystery box, Sean, that comes with a promo pack that contains 1 of 4 guaranteed V cards. Lugia V confirmed as one of the 4 promos, which I believe there's been leaks on lately of Lugia cards and merchandise, which we won't really talk about, but if you want to go out there and look for it, you can. Random 1 out of 4 deck box and deck sleeves are also included in the mystery box, and then it comes with 7 packs of Paradigm Trigger. Now, we do know, Sean, 1 of the 4 sets of mystery box, deck box and sleeves that are coming up to it, if you scroll up a little bit, Poke Guardian, which is where we're getting this information from, got an update on one of them. It is a little deck box and set of sleeves of Regidrago and Regieleki. Now, this is adorable. I don't know the artist who made this, but I want this really bad because it is adorable, Sean.
It does look like hand drawn, like by a kid.
Yeah, and it's really cute, and it's like different design-esques of Regidrago and Regieleki. It's not the same one copy-pasted every single time. So I think that this is a really interesting product. I mean, it's a Pokemon pack, but you get like deck box sleeves and a promo plus packs on top of it. It's almost like if you bought like an ETB almost, but you didn't know what you were getting in the ETB. Right? Like the promo, the sleeves, the dividers, like they were all random. I think that's like, I don't know. I think that's a really, really fun and cool thing. You know, we had the Start Deck 100, right?
Yeah.
The old thing in Japan where you got random theme decks, things like that.
Yeah,
and I mean, you had like a 1 in 100 chance of getting the shiny theme deck or whatever.
I guess, Jake, what do you think the other 3 are going to be?
I mean, truthfully, I don't know too much about Paradigm Trigger. Yeah. I feel like it's got to be related in those sets into what that is. We know that Regidrago V Star is going to be in that. Regieleki V Max. Omastar V is coming. That was leaked about. So I would honestly love an Ammonite. If we can get Ammonite on a deck box and sleeves, I will buy that up. I only have one. What's the set way back when? Like during the original era of like base set, jungle, fossil, all that stuff. The fireworks set. What was that called? The Legendary Collection.
Yes.
That's what it was. The only legendary collection card I have of that is the Firework Ammonite. It's one of my favorite cards that I own. Absolutely perfect. But
You know,
anyways,
I will say, Jake, you know what I think that they should put in here? I think the
what?
Unknown V should be in here. Because it's a
Oh, that
mystery
would
box.
be really cool. Yes.
Unknown.
So what are our guesses? So we already know the one, Reggie Drago, Reggie Lucky.
Well,
I'm
yeah.
gonna say Ammonite and Kabutops.
Well,
Right?
I don't think there's 2 Vs, right? I think you get 1 V. So
Well, we
Lugia.
don't. Well, no. I'm talking about like the. Well, I guess we could talk about the V's. I'm talking about like the deck box and the sleeves.
I'm guessing the deck box and the sleeves will be related to the Pokemon. So that's why I'm like, I think they'll have a Reggie. I think they're going to go Reggie Draco for the
For
V.
a promo?
For the promo. Yeah.
Okay.
I think they're going to go, they have Lugia. I think they're going to have, I think Unknown makes a lot of sense in a mystery box.
I think Unknown would be so. I think that's a wasted opportunity if you don't do that.
The fourth one, though, I don't know. It could be the Omastar that you're talking about.
Please give me Ammonite merch. I beg of you. You know, please. Just one time, please. They also in Paradigm Trigger recently announced Dragonite, like Dratini, Dragonair, Dragonite in terms of like regular old cards. So who knows? Maybe that trio will be inserted. Dragonite is one of the more popular Pokemon in the history of Pokemon. So who knows? But I think that's a really cool thing if you like Japanese product and you like fun little Gamba things, you know, and just test your luck, see what you can get. But Sean, if you want something else to spice up your collection, this isn't really news or anything like that. I just want to showcase. I saw this on Twitter. This is from Alexander Corbin on Twitter. They posted a picture. They went to the Peoria Regionals, and they got a bunch of signed cards from player. Azul, J.W. Krewall, Trainer Chip, Tord, Andrew Mahone. And they got these really sweet cards. So like Azul signed the Flying Pikachu. Andrew signed the Trainer Gallery Starmie V. JW signed the Dragon, like the gold rare, like shiny Dragonite EX. Tord signed Zoroark GX. Radiant Charizard signed by Trainer Chip. Like all these cards have meaning to like the people that sign them, and I think that this is such a cool. Like I don't see enough people show off signed cards nowadays, right?
Yeah.
Like people talk about how they've got the shiny Charizard GX or whatever, or the Uber. People talk about how they got big Pikachu VMAX Gold, right? But nobody talks about the signed stuff, and I don't know. I also live in an era of sports where like I have a bunch of signed sports stuff, you know, so I think it's kind of cool. Show us your collections on Twitter at MetapodTCG, Sean. Show off your collection on it too.
Jake, I will say, like for us, not saying that anybody wants our autographs, but I'm like all of these cards, a lot of them also have some relation to the different people that signed it, like especially Andrew and Tord. I know specifically. The others I'm not as familiar with, but
like I think Misty is Andrew's favorite character, and he's got I know he has Misty tattooed on him. I don't know about Starmie though. I think maybe, but it definitely Misty. Definitely Misty.
And so that's a great. So like, but like for us, it would just be, what would it be? It would be a Rowlet for you.
I give you that Rowlet. I've got like a stack of 75 to 100 of those Rowlets from Darkness Ablaze, Champion's Path. I don't have the McDonald's one though.
Oh, well,
I don't have that card yet.
But I was gonna say, like ours, we don't have any, like there's no crazy gold cards or anything.
You can do like a shiny Rowlet, the shiny Rowlet from was it Hidden Fates? I think it was.
Yeah, that's right.
Or the Rowlet in Alolan Executor, that alternate art, or just any Rowlet card. I think is cool. Doesn't have to be the max rarity, you know.
You're right.
What would your card be though, Sean?
I don't know. It'd probably just be Metapod.
You know what? That's not a bad one though.
I mean, it's not a great one, but it's not a bad one.
What do you mean it's not a great one? That is a U card. That is all.
True. That's true.
Do not put a cap on your value. But you know what you can put a cap on? It's record-breaking numbers at regionals. Sean, Peoria Regionals was tied the largest event with some caveats to it. credit to Christopher Szymanski for this fun fact. If you subtract round 1 no-shows to the Peoria Regionals and add round 2 ads, Baltimore and Peoria Regionals had the same record-breaking number of TCG Masters. Baltimore still gets the record because they had the most total players paired in the event by 4, but as Christopher says, what are the odds that they would have the same exact number? Over 1,000 people, Sean, 1,082 players at the Peoria Regionals.
That's crazy. Just huge. And, I guess with that many people playing, the question is, Lost Origin, first big, huge tournament of this format, are we going to have one clear top deck or two that emerges and everything else falls by the wayside? Or can the wisdom of the masses come back with a bunch of really good decks that are playable?
Let me tell you, Sean, I made the prediction that Hisuian Gudra was going to win the event, and let me tell you, I was wrong.
It came close, Jake.
It did come close.
It
did. It had more showings in top 16 than Mew, which is awesome. So if you can't see because you're listening on the audio-only version of the podcast, you will see that we're showing the top 16 of Peoria Regionals. Now, there were 2 Hisuian Gudras. There was a lot of Palkia, and by a lot, I mean 6 according to my quick math. There were some Garatinas, I will say, in different variants. Some Regigigas. Sean, the old faithful Regi deck, the cheap. Is Reggie still budget, actually? I haven't looked at prices since Worlds, Baltimore, Peoria.
Probably.
Anyways, some Hisuian Zoroark, which is very exciting. 1 Mew, I think I already mentioned that. And, Sean, there was only 1 lost box. Only 1 lost zone box. But it was piloted by arguably one of the greatest players of all time in Tord Redcliffe. And he ended up winning the whole thing with that deck. Sean, remind me again, what did you predict? Was your prediction closer than mine?
I don't remember. I think when we said, like, what's the most played deck and what's the best deck? And
You said what's the most played deck, and I said what do I think was gonna win?
Yeah, I thought that the most played deck would be, I think I said Lost Box, because that was the most played deck
in online tournaments leading up to it.
Yes. And I think this is a good example, though, of access to cards for online versus IRL formats making a big difference. Because if you're going to physically travel to an event, especially all the way out here, we have a couple of weeks to prepare.
Tord does not live in America.
No. Yeah, he doesn't. But
he's in Peoria, Illinois.
But in an online event, if you have limited access to cards and you don't want to pay a ton of money in code cards specifically, you might gravitate towards Lost Box over spending all the code cards you need for Palkia. But if you're buying things for physical and in person, the most played deck actually ended up being the Kirim deck,
which was very interesting. But Sean, do you want to take a look a little bit about the statistics?
Yeah, we could do that.
Of the event. So we got the statistics of the event courtesy of limitlesstcg.com, a great website for looking at competitive. And I believe this is just day 2 numbers in terms of, the most successful decks. So this doesn't illustrate day 1. There was 1 player on Dialga. We like the Dialga. 1 player on Shadow Rider Calyrex. That people keep chirping about that deck. I don't know. 3 players on Blissey, 6 on Hisuian Zoroark, which 2 of them made top 10 in the event. So pretty good ratio, I would say. 5 of them played the Lost Zone box. 10 of them played Giratina. 13 played Genesect. 13 played Kirim. 15 played Regis. 26 played an Arceus deck. And 24 played a Palkia deck, Sean. Palkia ended up getting the most points out of all the decks, and if you saw in the top 16 graphic that PokeStats TCG on Twitter posted, Palkia decks took up 5 of the top 6 spots.
Yeah, specifically Palkia, Inteleon,
had the most spots
yeah.
of them, but it was kind of even, I would say, in terms of the distribution, in terms of, what deck was more dominant than the other.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. Yeah, Palkia Inteleon is one version, and then you have Kyurem Palkia as another version. So obviously, Palkia plays a big role in both of those decks. It's just what flavor of water deck are you going for?
Yeah, what would you like to try today? Chunky Palkia water or thin Palkia water, as some would say.
Oh my gosh, that's
But Sean, let's take a look at some other stuff. What do you got in there that you want to showcase?
Well, I wanted to showcase briefly. So when I saw, I really wanted the Gudra deck to make top 8. And it came down to the wire. I think it was a Gudra mirror match on the last day of day 1 stream. And the winner would have made top 8, but they ended in a tie because they went to time because Gudra do be taking a long time.
Yeah, Gudra, if you didn't hear our podcast before, it takes a lot to knock it down.
Yeah. So like Gudra, the whole idea is it has an attack called Rolling Iron. It does 200 damage, but then you prevent 80 damage to you on the crackback, basically. So if you can combine that with healing cards like Hyper Potion, Crystal Cave, etc., or the Gudra, Moisture Star ability to heal off all the damage from itself, then like you could survive a couple of extra hits, get your prizes before your opponent can, and that's how you win. But
Sean, I would like to point out one thing in this list that we're showing, the top 16 list. If you remember on the Metapod podcast, we talked about, well, how do you beat something like Kyurem, right? Kyurem has untapped potential in terms of the amount of damage it can do. And I believe it was Sean that brought up the point of, why don't you put a Zamazenta V in your deck? Can't hit it, right, with Dauntless Shield. It's a metal type Pokemon, so you're hitting for weakness. And looky here what we see. We see a Zamazenta V in this. Now, was it helpful? No idea, but they got top 16, so it had to be helpful, right?
Actually, so one person who got 4th in an online, or like a big tournament in Europe, online tournament, who we retweeted from the Metapod, was like, Zamazenta is pretty good. And the person, Cyrus, or somebody else that they tested with, when they were asked about the Zamazenta, some people speculated, oh, it's great for Mew because you discard a special energy when you do the attack. And the person was like, oh, I mean, I guess it's good for Mew. Really, it's there for Kyurem. And it worked really well. So
we're not crazy.
I was like, oh my gosh, Jake. Everybody else had the same. They definitely did not get the idea from the pod.
No, yeah, we are not saying that we meta the Gudra deck, but we like to think that we shared at least one brain cell with good top players.
That's what I call a that's a cold shot right there.
Yeah, but maybe it was obvious, but we don't need to talk about that. But Sean, what else do you want to talk about in this tournament?
I mean, Jake, let's talk about the deck that won it all by Tord.
I do want to talk about this deck because this deck played some interesting things that, is a lot different than what we talked about the last time we talked about this list. So Tord Recklif's deck, the Lost Zone box deck, you got your comfy Colress engine, right? You've got a lot of those going on. You also have things like an Oranguru in this deck, which can be pretty interesting, I feel like, in this, especially when you have a couple cards like Marnie, stuff like that. You also play the Radiant Charizard package, and I thought that this was really interesting, especially when the casters, shout out to the casters of this weekend, y'all were great, talked about how with Sableye in Lost Mine sets up damage really well for Radiant Charizard. So if you look at this list, there is no damage modifiers that Charizard usually has paired up with it. No like choice belts or anything like that. With Sableye being able to place 12 damage counters everywhere, especially against Palkia, right, one of the most popular decks and strongest decks in the event, you can put 3 damage counters on multiple Palkia V-Stars for your Radiant Charizard to set up one-hit KOs with Combustion Blast doing 250 damage. But Sean, that's just the first thing that I want to point out with this deck. Because you know what the other thing is that I think is really neat about this?
What's that?
It's the fact that you're playing 2 Manaphies in this deck.
Tord was
2 Manaphies.
Tord was terrified of spread damage in this deck. Because, I mean, and fair enough, Comfy is not very chunky. Sableye is not very chunky.
Sableye, both under 90 HP, right? And if your Radiant Charizard's in the active, a Moonlight Shuriken will do a knockout with weakness. But you know the reason why you play Manaphy, Sean? Because there was a huge increase in things like canceling Cologne in the event. And so when you have an increase of canceling Cologne, right? Canceling Cologne, you bring up the Manaphy, right, with cross switchers, boss, whatever, you know, the Manaphy's in the active, the Greninja, Radiant Greninja's in the active. If you canceling Cologne, you can Moonlight Shuriken the Comfey's on the bench, the Sableye's on the bench, and therefore Manaphy still takes up a very important spot in there because with the canceling Cologne, water or wave veil is turned off. So what I saw on stream people do to battle against that is they would put both Manaphy's on the field. They're like, okay, you can canceling Cologne the one, but that doesn't mean this one on the bench is affected, and therefore your Moonlight Shuriken is useless. And I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, and also like it's the benefit too of like if you're playing against another Lost Zone deck that plays Greninja, then they could just Sableye your Manaphy away, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's like, it is interesting. I will say this deck from Tord, especially, because he's playing the Lost Box deck, all single prizers, so it's a really grindy, long game. But he has a few cards in here that are very different, I think, than what people would have expected. He doesn't play any quick balls, doesn't play any level balls, no ultra balls. Instead, he opts for a 4/4 of Battle VIP Pass and Fog Crystal.
Yep.
Because the Fog Crystal will get you Comfy or Sableye, or it'll get you your energy, which is like a really good option. But what that also means with this deck, which the casters pointed out, your Cramorant and your Manaphy's, there are no search cards in your deck for any of those Pokemon, or Charizard too, or Oranguru. So like you have 6 of your Pokemon in your deck that are not searchable by any means, which I thought was just odd, just very odd.
And you also look at something like the Clara, right? This list plays 2 Claras if you're looking. How do you get those Pokemon in the discard? Right? You don't have Ultra Balls, you don't have Quick Balls. They just have to get knocked out, I guess, to go to the discard, and then you'd be able to find them again, right? That's how you chain those Charizards.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot to ask for, I feel like. But it worked.
Yeah.
And that's what happens when you're one of the best players ever to play the game, right?
Yeah. No, this deck is wild. This deck is not how I would have imagined building Lost Box, but, you know, like you said, clearly worked.
I also saw this kind of strategy before we leave this deck. If you look at this, you see that Tord plays 4 Path to the Peaks.
Yes.
If you do not remember, Path to the Peak shuts off all rule box abilities in play. That includes Radiant Charizard with Excited Heart. Now, if Charizard has to get those 5 energies with this deck, that ain't happening, Captain.
No.
Right? So you probably be wondering, with Charizard being such an important attacker, why do you have 4 Paths to the Peaks? And look at that lost vacuum in there.
Yep.
I saw numerous players do this, where they would put down a Path to the Peak or Pokestop. I saw this a lot on day 1 with a Pokestop of people playing Lost Box. They would put down a Pokestop, use that Pokestop, right, for their own benefit, and then they would lost vacuum the Pokestop away.
Yeah.
So then their opponent couldn't use it. And I think it's kind of that same concept with Path to the Peak, except for, like, you know, I'll put down Path to the Peak, right? So then you can't use Genesec's ability 18 different times, right?
You can't use Radiant Greninja.
Or you can't use Palkia V-Star, right? Or Kyurem VMAX's abilities. But when I'm ready to use it for Charizard, okay, lost vacuum.
Yeah, or it's important also, you can't use Empoleon V's ability. Which,
yes, that as well.
For this deck, I would almost argue that was the biggest reason that Tord went heavy Path to the Peak, Lost Vacuum,
Mm-hmm.
is because like Empoleon, it was like a huge play to shut off Lost Box decks in Palkia because you put that down and all of a sudden you're comfy.
You
engine.
can't comfy.
Yeah, and if you can't comfy, you got nothing.
Yeah, you can't find cards. It's not like Jirachi Stellar Wish, every 18 times a turn. With scoop up nets, escape ropes, switch carts.
Yeah.
Like there are so many switching options in this deck. Air balloons as well.
Yeah.
Not to mention the manual retreating you can do and then get those energies back with Clara. It's crazy. This deck was so cool to watch and unfold because I would have never thought. I remember when I can't remember who it was on day one that did it on stream. Did the Pokestop Lost Vacuum play? I would have never thought of that. That was so, because not only does it prevent your opponent from utilizing, the Pokestop, it also helps put cards in the Lost Zone, right? It's like a double whammy, and it's so cool.
Yeah.
Like you're putting 2 cards in the Lost Zone with that, and also stalling out your opponent.
Yeah,
insanely cool deck.
Yeah, and also I will say like it's weirdly not the cheapest deck for a single prize deck because like Battle VIP Pass is stupidly expensive right now. What are they like $4 a piece?
I think it's relatively expensive. It is $3.67 USD a piece.
So a little expensive for an uncommon item. And then
Charizard is $27.
Yeah, and I don't think that's going to go down anytime soon. The good news out there, if you want to play any kind of single prize deck, or not even, but if you want to play a deck that can slot in a couple of fire energy, you only need one because that's all you can play. But other than that, very cheap deck. So, yeah.
Really cool. Again.
Jake, what is a deck that you want to talk about real quick? Are there any in particular?
I would say if we're going to talk about another deck, I mean, we probably have to talk about like the Palkias, right? Because the Palkias ran crazy. Or do we want to talk about a different one?
Let's do Kyurem Palkia. Yeah, because it is Palkia, but it's like also Kyurem, and that's like the new.
The new, the good old new. So I think what we can do is if we look at the 4th place one, because I think the 4th place one is a little bit
more interesting.
I don't want to say sketchier, but it is more interesting in the fact that it only plays a 1/1 line of Origin Form Palkia V-Star. The 3rd place one played a 2/2. This one has a little bit more interesting of decisions that are made, including a Lost Vacuum in there, right?
Yeah.
You see a Path to the Peak and you can't find your training courts? Well, just get rid of that. That's fine. Maybe the air balloon as well, or a choice belt, or anything of the sort that's preventing you from doing what you want to do. With all these water type Pokemon, you're playing a heavy count of Melanie and Irida. I feel like it's been a while since we've seen Melanie in decks, right, Sean? Ever since Irida came about, Irida has really taken the storm of the supporter of choice, I feel like. And it's kind of put Melanie on the back burner. So hopefully you bought your Melanie full arts before this event, because they're probably going to go back up. They're still relatively cheap right now. Mommy's only like $10, so go get it. But anyways, playing 2 Empoleon Vs, the Oranguru we talked about in here, the 1/1 line of Origin Form Palkia, Radiant Greninja, a Drapion V as well. Sean, we don't really need to talk about Mew VMAX, but I know that Mew VMAXs were playing Drapion V for the mirror match.
That's
not
super
kidding.
Weird. Okay.
Not kidding. It works though.
I mean, sure, but like that's.
I mean, if you just start Drapion though, you kind of just lose.
Yeah.
But just don't start at Forehead. Easy. But anyways, looking at this list again, heavy with the Battle VIP passes. Battle VIP pass just continues to be a very high roll heavy, very good card. But in Lost Zone and this deck right here that you're seeing, the Kyurem V Palkia deck, it works out because, again, just like the Lost Zone deck, you can do stuff with the Battle VIP Pass after turn 1, considering the Ultra Balls, the quick balls in this deck, the lost vacuum in this deck. You can get rid of this card pretty easily. And also you can use Glaciated World, Kieran VMAX's ability. Maybe you don't need the energy, but you have a Dead Battle VIP pass right in your hand. You can put it on top with a Rangaroo or something and use Glaciated World to just get it out of the deck, draw through, you know, another card in your deck. It's something that I don't think a lot of people would do, but it's one of those like kind of plays that, you know, maybe if you had to, it's not that bad.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, this is it's a cool list. It's definitely one of those decks that, like, eventually I do want to build and play, but Palkia, the price is still pretty high for a Palkia V-Star, and there's enough other good decks out there that I'm like...
Still about $25.
Yeah, the Palkia V-Star. Now, I will say, if you want to play the Kyurem lists, the most you're going to need is 2. You don't need 3 V-Stars in that list, so, like, save a little bit of money. But... yeah, it's a really cool deck.
This one playing, we talked about the Wash Energy last week, Sean. It's playing 2 of them now. They're slowly increasing on those Wash Energies. They listen to us, Sean.
I will say there's 2 Wash Energies and 2 Empoleon V. So, like, the counter...
You really didn't want to lose to Lost Box in this one.
No, like, the counter strengths here were very high.
I will say though, I don't know how this does in like against the 3rd place list. I would imagine that they face. No, they didn't face off against the 3rd place.
I don't believe
Palkia list. But the 3rd place Palkia list a little bit different. Only 1 battle VIP pass, right? Only 1 Empoleon. Opting for a Roxanne and Cheryl.
I do like
in
that,
the list.
though.
That's a little bit different. I kind of like that.
Yeah, the Cheryl is definitely strange, but, like, look, depending on when you Cheryl and, like, the other, you know, options you have to power things up, it can be really annoying. Like, say somebody doesn't really have enough to knock out your Palkia, then they have to hit into a Kyurem, and they're trying to set up damage, and then you Cheryl. Oh, that would be so annoying.
Yeah, especially because I mentioned earlier how Lost Mine with Sableye can put 3 damage counters on a bunch of different Palkias. So that can just go in and just negate all of that damage away, and you might not even have energies on that dude. So it ends up working out, Sean.
Yeah, and then, like, the other card that I think you'll start to see a little bit more of from time to time now is Lost City. I think that's definitely a card that people are... underestimating the strength of, especially if, like, counter box decks, like whether it's Lost Box or the more you see decks that are built and designed to counter a variety of different decks, the more Lost City becomes useful, because, like, all you got to do is knock out that counter, and if they
all you got to do is just knock out that 1 Charizard.
Right. If you knock out the 1 Charizard, or a lot of these Lost Box decks, they're only going to play 2 Sableye, right? If you can knock out the Sableyes and all they've got left is, like, Cramorants, that ain't going to go well for them.
Even then, like, even if it's just for that 1 turn, right? If they only have 2 Sableyes, just taking 1 away makes it that much harder for a deck. I've played plenty of Lost Zone decks, and I've had my fair share of, you know, 2s, and then 1 gets Lost Zone away, and then all of a sudden I only have 1 left. It makes it really difficult.
Yeah.
Especially when you're playing Shedinja. Like,
oh my gosh.
Someone Fabas your Shedinja, you're like, oh boy, here we go. And it's a terrible time. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. But there was some, gosh, this was just a really cool tournament. Sean, can we also open up Grant Manley's Gigas deck?
Yeah, what place was that?
It was 16th, I believe, or 18th?
18th. Yeah, there we go.
There's one card that I want to talk about in here in the Reggie Gigas deck that you can't play on PTCGL because it's actually banned. It's Gift Energy. Sean, do you know off the top of your head without looking at it what Gift Energy is? Because I don't.
I know it provides colorless.
As long as this card is attached to a Pokemon, it provides colorless energy. If the Pokemon this card is attached to is knocked out by damage from an attack from your opponent's hand, draw cards until you have 7 in your hand. So very, very cool. It's like the what's that called? The egg?
Yeah, Lucky
It's
Egg.
like the egg, yeah, except with Regigigas, using ancient wisdom to accelerate energies from the discard, you can constantly put this on your Pokemon
Yeah, no,
again.
it is interesting. Like I've never really played the Regidex. I don't know how.
It's a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, I'm sure, and it did
It's
really
so
well.
much fun.
It clearly did really well. It had a lot of day twos. I think a lot of people feel very strongly that this deck might be the best single prize deck in the format. I personally, I prefer the Lost Zone mechanic myself because, like, if you get unlucky or say you have one of your Reggies prized, Jake, and somebody
Remember when was it Drew Kennett had like
two Reggie steals,
two or three Reggies prized and the Hisuian heavy ball and just scooped immediately after he saw his prizes? And this was like a top 4 match.
Yep. I mean, that's why, like, it's a good deck, and I think the ratios are fine, but, like, you could just get unlucky. Now, people will say, oh, that could happen with any deck, but I'm like, yeah, but, like, if that happens with this deck, you just don't have a deck.
I feel like
doesn't work.
I feel like the problem with the Reggie deck is that when you whiff with the Reggie deck, instead of, like, whiffing with the Lost Box deck, it hurts way worse with the Reggie deck.
Yeah.
Like, the Lost Box is so consistent. Both decks are really consistent, but the Lost Box has consistency to where, like, you can get it pretty early with Cramorant, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can get it going pretty early with Cramorant, get things started, start churning things, going. With the Reggie deck, you miss, a Reggie, and you can't do anything. Like, you can't attack unless you manually attached every single turn, and that means that you're probably losing anyways.
Yeah, it is definitely really awkward because in that single prizer match, right, it's really like who is keeping up with taking those prizes, right? And
yeah,
I think, the Reggie deck is more likely to whiff for a turn or two in the game.
I don't know if it's that it's more likely to whiff. I just think it hurts a lot more if you whiff.
Okay, fair, yeah.
Yeah.
Oof.
Like, they might whiff the same amount, but, like, the whiffs ain't even, man.
Yeah, Jake, I think for me, like, that was all the decks that, like, for this weekend that made sense to, like, bring up. Those are, like, the new decks, the best decks. I want to know from you, though. We made the Zamazenta prediction last week.
We made the Zamazenta. Yeah. We predicted Zamazenta in Goodra decks.
I will say, I hadn't heard anybody mention Zamazenta. We talked about it, and lo and behold, all the Goodra decks have Zamazenta. So, look, correlation is not causation. But
remember when we called what was it, level ball coming back?
You called it. Called the level ball.
I'm telling you, I might be crazy, but I'm also right.
So, Jake, I want you to give me one card that you think people are sleeping on, and I'll give you my card. This is really a setup for me to say something.
Oh, crap. I was not ready for this. I feel like Hisuian Zoroark.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, it had some top 16 finishes at Peoria, but I just feel like people don't talk about that deck a lot. I feel like it's the stepchild of the set, with Giratina being there and Kyurem now being the big thing, and
Goodra is a fan favorite
as well. Goodra, right? I mean, it's one of my favorites too, but I feel like Zoroark, I don't know. I feel like it's really close.
Yeah. I think Zoroark is it's a good card. Like, let's just be frank. The problem is you have a lot of good cards in this set.
Yeah, there's so many good cards in this set.
But for me, Jake, I want to say I think a card that is being slept on and should be considered in particularly decks that have any sort of single use or setup Pokemon is Thornton.
Thornton. Ooh, we didn't see a lot of Thornton.
I mean,
we saw some Thornton.
There was some Thornton at the top tables. And so for those of you who don't know, Thornton is a supporter. And the supporter says that you can switch a basic Pokemon in your discard pile for a basic Pokemon. Is it on your bench maybe, though?
I think it's on your bench.
Yeah, I think it has to be on your bench. So, like, one thing to keep in mind. But you can basically swap the cards, but all conditions, damage, energy, all of that stuff stays attached. And by conditions, I also mean number of turns that the card was in play. So if you
it's just a basic Pokemon. It can be in the active, it can be in the
okay, cool.
On the bench, it could be anywhere.
So what I really like about that, Jake, is you could have shenanigan plays. So say, like, look, there's a lot of Pokemon that you don't want to stay on your bench. I'm talking about the Crobats, your Luminions, your Empoleon even in certain matchups. Like maybe you start a Pokemon. If you start the Drapion, that could be a field bad, right? And if you play, even if it's a 1 of Thornton, and because it remembers how many turns it's in play when you switch it, you could just switch it for a Mew, Evo right into that Mew VMAX. Switch it for your Palkia, boom, Evo right into the Palkia V-Star, and you're fine. But I think that we will also see some really sneaky things happen, Jake, where people attach energy and attack with, like, I have a secret play in my back pocket for my Goodra deck, which includes Medicham, and there's a Thornton in the deck.
Did you figure that out?
So the way that it works is you attach a choice belt to the Zamazenta. It's doing 160, double the damage, 320, right? Cool. If they can't knock that Zamazenta out with something on the following turn, you know what you do? Thornton, from a Medicham that's in your discard, switch it with your Zamazenta. It's already got the energy attached. 2 damage counters.
Colorless is the attack.
Yep. 2 damage counters on that Kyurem. Boom, take an extra turn.
And then you Thornton again to get the other Zamazenta.
I mean, you could. I just, for me, Jake, that's like a moment of just like, oh, that like.
You know what someone should do? They should Medicham Thornton into Dialga V-Star and use the V-Star.
Yes.
Just take as many extra turns as possible consecutively.
I mean,
that's what.
Yeah.
Is that going to be good? No, but that would be really funny if that happened, and someone should do it. But I will say there were a lot of people that I saw that had their like first day 2s, whatever, that had really, really good events, really, really good showcases. I know Gnarly, one of the people in our community that I've known for a long time, first ever day 2. Now they got to win Worlds. Calling you out on this podcast because I can and I run this show. But Sean, do we have anything else to talk about today?
I don't think so, Jake.
Oh man, I can't wait for more events and more decks. And we'll give it all to you here on the MetaPod Podcast. The Pokemon Podcast revolves around the evolving meta. Have a good week.